Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, ranking the coaches in every conference in the Power 5. We have done this in the past with rave reviews from you. So we invite you to comment, to like the videos, of course, share the videos, and of course, drum up some interest and drum up some conversation and debate as we march through all the conferences and rank the coaches, one through, in this case, the Pac-12, 12 coaches in the Pac-12. Only one newcomer in replacing Mike McIntyre at Colorado. Since this is the first in the series, I would like to let you know how I'm looking at these rankings. So this is not a legacy or career award or achievement. So take somebody like a Bobby Bowden or Joe Paterno at the end of their coaching careers. Let's say this is 2010 and I'm ranking the coaches. I would not rank Bobby Bowden or Joe Paterno as one of the best coaches in college football, even though clearly they were two of the best all time and at some point in their career could certainly be ranked and rated as the best in the country. But at that particular point in time, they were not at that level. They were not performing at that level. Their skills had eroded, and they were still capable to some degree and still would be given a level of respect. But in terms of the rankings for me, they're based on right now. That taken into consideration, the track record does matter because not every coach can be ranked just based on what their team did the previous season. So, for example, Mark D'Antonio doing a fine job at Michigan State over his career, actually an excellent job for much of that time in East Lansing, went 3-9 in 2016. Now, did Mark D'Antonio suddenly not know how to coach, and should his ranking be reflected by that 3-9 record? No, not in my book, not in my case. Sure, I took it into consideration. Certainly, I looked at what the failings were for that particular football team, and Mark D'Antonio took a bit of a hit in my rankings, but that didn't take him from being one of the elite coaches in college football to a complete moron based on a 3-9 record one season. All right, let's also take into consideration, yes, the results mean a lot. That's why they play the games, to win championships. Winning championships, winning percentage, getting to bowl games, winning bowl games, doing all those things that account for success in college football have to be taken into large consideration, but we also put it into context. It's more difficult to win at Kansas than it is Oklahoma, more difficult at Vanderbilt than Alabama in the SEC. So the expectations have to be placed into context. Also, where did that program stand when that particular coach took over that team? Did they have to build an entire program? Were they handed the keys a la Nick Saban to Les Miles? Pat Fitzgerald going 9-4 at Northwestern is much different than Ed Ogeron going 9-4 at LSU based on resources, recruiting, the money involved, and of course the school tradition and the amount of support given that particular coach. All right. Then also we've got new coaches coming in who have never been head coaches anywhere. How do we rank them, rate them? Well, there has to be an amount of projection. So I have to, in a sense, look at the school, look at the hire, look at the trust factor that I have in that particular school's administration and football program to make the right hire, put some trust in them, and then also project that out. But also, I generally take a neutral approach for a new head coach who's never coached anywhere else as a head coach. Take a neutral approach, meaning every coach in that conference that I consider to be successful, I will rank ahead of that coach. The coaches that I believe that are underachieving and are not successful at their particular programs, I will rank below that new head coach. All right, let's dive into the Pac-12 and remind you that if you want to support Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, you go to Patreon, where we will have exclusive live streams, very fun and valuable content coming up at Patreon. Join us there. It should be a whole lot of fun. Also, grab one of the links down in the description section and do your Amazon shopping using the link there. That will help build the channel and keep the discussion, the debate, and the analysis coming your way. All right, let's dive into the Pac-12. We've got a new coach on the scene, and he is Mel Tucker from the University of Georgia, taking over at Colorado. Mel Tucker is 46 years old. He has signed a 5-year contract in Boulder, taking over for Mike McIntyre. He's going to be paid $2.5 million this first year. Okay, he was Georgia's defensive coordinator in 2016, 17, and 18. Pretty easy gig based on the talent level there, but Georgia's defense is still playing better under Mel Tucker than they had in previous years. According to 247 Sports, he was the 14th ranked recruiter in 2018. That's going to be obviously something that he's going to have to take into consideration in building a program in Boulder, a difficult place to win, but he says with a footprint of the lower Midwest, the Southwest, out to the West Coast, he's going to be able to do it in Colorado. His defenses were top 15 in the nation all 3 years he was there, including a number 6 ranking in 2017. Mel Tucker was a defensive back at Wisconsin under Barry Alvarez, again, taking over for Mike McIntyre. He's never been a head coach. We rank him number 12 in the Pac-12. At number 11, we've got Oregon State's Jonathan Smith. He's got a huge undertaking here, taking over one of the worst programs in Power 5 play. Went 2-10 his first season, 1-8 against the Pac-12. He was given an awful roster. It's deplorable. He returns to his team that he led as a quarterback, won a Fiesta Bowl MVP. Young football fans out there, imagine this. When Jonathan Smith was the quarterback at Oregon State not that long ago in the early 2000s, they finished in the top 3 in the country, won 11 games, won the Fiesta Bowl, and he was the MVP. The one win, I believe, is significant for Jonathan Smith. They were down 31-3 at Colorado. Hadn't won a Pac-12 game in 2 years. Came back to win 41-34, instilling a lot of confidence in that team to play a little bit better down the stretch. Jonathan Smith, with a good pedigree, as Chris Peterson's quarterback coach and offensive coordinator, both at Boise State and at Washington. The awful roster parlayed itself into these kind of losses in the Pac-12. They lost by 21, 28, 19, 42, 17, 31, 19, and 40. So they weren't close in any game except for the big comeback, down 28 to win at Colorado. Jonathan Smith at number 11 for Oregon State. At number 10, we go to a winning coach, but he's underachieving, and it's getting worse, and it's not looking good for 2019 for Clay Helton and USC. He's 32-17 at SC, 24-10 in the Pac-12. He started in 2015, took over 3 or 4 games into the season, went 5-4. Then 2016 was really a season he needed to capitalize on. They got off to the rough start. They got blasted by Alabama. They lost to Stanford. They lost to Utah. But in that Utah game, Helton made the change to Sam Darnold, and they won the rest of their games. They should have won the Pac-12. They were the best team in the Pac-12. They beat eventual champion Washington by 2 scores in Seattle. They won the Rose Bowl, and things looked great for the USC program. In 2017, they won the Pac-12, but unimpressively. They played well in the conference. They beat Stanford by a field goal in the championship game, but they were just completely outclassed by Notre Dame and Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl, and that was a harbinger of things to come. 20-18. Clay Helton goes 4-5 in the Pac-12, 5-7. Considering they're playing in arguably the weakest division in college football, going 5-7 with that talent, the best talent in the conference, arguably against Washington, that shouldn't happen. Yes, he had JT Daniels at quarterback. He had to develop the true freshman. Yes. But only scoring 3 points against a Stanford defense that otherwise did not prove to be a really good defense the rest of the season. Leading at Texas 14-3, then getting blitzed in the second half. So Tom Herman made the adjustments. Clay Helton could not. They lose 37-14. They lose to a 2-9 UCLA team. A 2-9 awful UCLA team beats USC. He can't get his team up to play their rival. And they lose 34-27. They were fortunate to beat Arizona and Washington State on a controversial call late. Clay Helton is on the hot seat despite 24-10 in the Pac-12 and a championship in 2017. He's at number 10 on our coaches list in the Pac-12. At number 9 is a guy that you talk about controversy. This was a controversial selection for Arizona State in selecting Herm Edwards. You win. You play to win the games. Yes, you do. 7-6, 5-4 in the Pac-12 last year. It seemed like a joke to many. What was going on? He was going to be CEO. He couldn't even select his own coaching staff. He was forced to keep the coaching staff that was given to him. He's coming from broadcasting for a long time. He last coached in the NFL as a head coach with the Chiefs and the Jets going back to 2007. But he's going to coach college football and go on the recruiting trail. They look pretty good. They did lose 2 subpar efforts here to the group of 5, losing to San Diego State and a really good Fresno State team, but still a Pac-12 losing to the Fresno State Bulldogs in the bowl game. Clock management was never, game management, never a strength of Herm Edwards. I could go into his Jets career and go through playoff losses against the Pittsburgh Steelers in particular, and even a win against the San Diego Chargers in which he lucked out. Bad game manager at that point. Maybe he's learned something. We saw early in the season against Michigan State when he actually outsmarted Mark D'Antonio down the stretch to set up a game-winning field goal and win it over Sparty. Number 9 is Herm Edwards, Arizona State. Number 8, we got Mario Cristobal, Oregon, 9-4 in his first season at Eugene, 7-2 in the Pac-12. And you talk about clock management, he basically blew the game against Stanford. Oregon had the game won. If you did the math in the metrics, considering field position, down and distance, and time on the clock, they should have salted away the game. They had it, but they handed the ball off. They fumbled, and they got burned. It may have cost him getting to the Pac-12 championship game if you consider that they beat Washington head-to-head, and they would have gone 8-1 in the Pac-12 with that win. No embarrassing losses, though, for this program that had been slumping. Slumping under Mark Helfrich and then under Willie Taggart in losing 8 games, then 6 games. They had no embarrassing losses, except they did have one curious game at Arizona, losing to the Wildcats, who were deplorable most of the season, losing that game 44-15. Again, they did defeat the best team in the conference, Washington. Mario Cristobal turned around Florida International. He was bounced after one bad season, 3-9 in 2012, and then he coached under Nick Saban, and that's got to be to his credit and advantage at this point. And he is recruiting out of his mind right now. Number 1 class in the Pac-12 this past season, number 7 in the nation, according to 247 Sports. Number 2 in his first go-around at Oregon, playing catch-up, and 13th ranked in the country. So Mario Cristobal recruiting well and winning at this point at Oregon, our number 8 coach. At number 7, we go with Kevin Sumlin of Arizona. Disappointing effort from him and the team in 2018. He's known as a quarterback and passing game guru. He's known as a big-time recruiter, but his teams have routinely disappointed. Okay, he hit the big splash with Johnny Manziel early in his stay at Texas A&M. Of course, their first team beat Alabama. They finished in the top 10 in the nation. They won the Cotton Bowl. They finished 11-2. The next team wasn't quite as good, but they still finished in the top 20 and won a bowl game. At Houston, he was coming off a fine 12-1 season that landed him the Texas A&M job. But then he comes to Arizona. They go 5-7. They go 4-5, coming off winning seasons under Rich Rodriguez. And they were just flat out destroyed and did not compete against the likes of Houston, Utah, Washington State. They lost all those games by 30-plus points. And look at what he did at Texas A&M. It happened over and over and over and over. They beat the bad teams in the non-conference. They won their first few SEC games. They got off to 5-0 starts routinely. And those 5-0 starts usually turned into 8-5 finishes. They did turn into all 8-5 finishes for Kevin Sumlin. Still the number 7 guy, still has some cachet. Again, quarterback whisperer, recruiter. We'll see what he can do in Tucson. He's at number 7. All right, number 6 in the Pac-12 is a guy that I think is on the rise, and he's got his program on the rise at Cal Berkeley, and that's Justin Wilcox. Did a stellar job as a defensive coordinator, and sometimes when a coordinator goes to one particular situation and it turns out well, he's given a little bit too much credit, and that vaults him into a head coaching job. But Justin Wilcox did it repeatedly at Wisconsin, at USC, at Washington, Tennessee, and Boise State. They all had well-rated defenses while he was there. All right, in 2017, he signs at Cal, and they beat North Carolina. They beat Ole Miss. They had 3 losses by 3 points or less, including number 8 Washington State. So despite missing a bowl game in 2017, his first campaign showed a lot of promise. Then they came through last year at 7-6, 4-5 in the Pac-12. They came that close to winning a bowl game. They lost to TCU in overtime. They beat Washington. They beat USC. They're not supposed to beat those programs at Cal. They beat Washington and USC. They beat BYU. They only gave up 42 points in those 3 games. So that's Justin Wilcox taking his defensive pedigree, moving that to the head coaching position and having that influence on the defensive scheme and the defensive approach. They only lost to Washington State, 19-3, the team with the best record in the Pac-12. Look out for this guy and this program. The man can coach. The recruiting has been decent. They're never going to recruit out of their minds at Cal. It's just not built that way because of the academic requirements. He's had 2 number 42 classes in the nation. Number 6 is Justin Wilcox from Cal. We move to number 5 and Mike Leach at Washington State. During this whole situation with Cliff Kingsbury getting fired at Texas Tech, somehow maintaining his job the last few seasons, I didn't know how or why, losing more than he won, routinely putting up 5 and 7 seasons after Mike Leach. Now, Tommy Tuberville was there for 2 years, but right before that, Mike Leach won 65% of his games at Texas Tech. They went 28-10 his last 3 seasons. They were ranked in the final top 25. Texas Tech was ranked under Mike Leach 5 of his last 6 seasons. The Washington State program was awful when he took it over. He turned it around, implemented his system. His teams they're aggressive, they're smart, they play with speed and tempo, and even the defense. He has even recognized, if I want to win, I need to play defense. And even the rushing game, they haven't rushed. They still throw at 75% of the time. But if you look at the rushing statistics at Washington State during this improvement from 3-9 before him, it's been marked. He's 37-15 there his last 4 seasons. Went 11-2 this past year. Top 10 in the nation. Won a bowl game. Washington State's first top 10 finish since 2002. They only need to get by Washington. He's got to figure out a way to beat Chris Peterson and the Huskies. Ignore the recruiting rankings. He's getting the job done. He's finding his type of players that fit his system. Mike Leach. And he's funny. He's funny. He's quirky. He's strange. He says whatever he wants. That only adds to the ranking. Number 5, Mike Leach. Number 4, Chip Kelly, UCLA. Yes, they were awful this year, but I tend to give coaches a bit of a break on season 1 for obvious reasons. It's a transition. They got into the recruiting cycle late. They had to implement their system, especially when it's that much different from Jim Mora's approach and system to Chip Kelly. So, hey, it's still on his record, 3-6 in the Pac-12, 3-9. They had an atrocious 2018. They were better late in the season. The win over USC, as I mentioned, and they just played better. Now we're going to see if Chip Kelly still has it. If you look at the recruiting rankings for this UCLA roster under Jim Mora and now Kelly, they are eerily similar to the talent in terms of the recruiting rankings that he had at Oregon when he went. And again, this is based on right now, but if you could do it 5 years ago, 6, 7, 8 years ago, you most likely can do it now. And Chip Kelly went 46-7 at Oregon, 33-3 in the Pac-12. He dominated the Pac-12. Mike Bellotti built the program. Chip Kelly raised it to elite status. They finished number 11, 3-4-2 in the nation when he was there, and they lose the national championship game by a field goal on the last play of the game to Auburn. Otherwise, they would have been the one team that challenged an SEC team during that SEC run of national championships. Now, he won at Oregon based on warp speed, spacing, quick mobile offensive linemen. Are those real advantages now in today's game, since most systems have implemented a lot of that. We'll see. Again, he's got a similar roster at UCLA than what he had at Oregon. Chip Kelly's at number 4 in my rankings, but he needs to start winning at UCLA. Number 3, Kyle Whittingham at Utah. He's won 120, lost 61 with the Utes, 69-51 in conference play, but that's including Mountain West participation. Since joining the Pac-12, Kyle Whittingham is 4 games under 500 in the Pac-12. But again, making that transition to the Pac-12 took a little bit of time. He had the magic touch in postseason play. He was 11-1 in bowl games until, and very close to going 12-1, blowing a 20-3 lead against Northwestern in this past season's Holiday Bowl. Inexplicably, they give up 28 straight points to a not a dynamic offense and blow it 31-20. But let's consider he was missing his quarterback and top running back going into that game. His teams protect the ball. They're smart. They control the line of scrimmage, especially on defense. Remember his 2008 team that went undefeated and beat Nick Saban's first really good, near great Alabama team in the Sugar Bowl. His teams have finished ranked in the top 25 at the season's end 6 of 11 times at Utah. Kyle Whittingham, we rank him at number 3 in the Pac-12. Number 2 is David Shaw of Stanford, 82-26 in Palo Alto, 55-17 in the Pac-12. Of course, he took over for Jim Harbaugh, and Harbaugh had established that program in the right direction. David Shaw has been ranked 6 of 8 years. His Stanford teams 4 times in the top 10. They've won 5 division championships, 3 Pac-12 championships. He does have recruiting challenges that we're aware of, so the ceiling has probably been met by David Shaw. Now they've kind of leveled off. Now, will they stay there? So, David Shaw has achieved Pac-12 championships, Rose Bowl wins, top 5 finishes. Okay, the last few years have not been quite as kind to Stanford football. Still good, finished 9-4 this past season, fringe top 25 team. They almost made the 2015 college football playoff, losing on the last play of the game to Notre Dame on a field goal that would have ushered them into the Pac-12 championship game and winning. They went to the Rose Bowl anyway, but would have made the college football playoff. David Shaw, well-respected, and that vies into it as well. David Shaw at number 2 in the Pac-12. The number 1 coach in the Pac-12, this was not a difficult decision for me to make. Chris Peterson at Washington doing a stellar job, as we all expected him to. He did not build the program at Boise State. That was built by Houston Nutt, Dan Hawkins, but he raised it. Again, he raised it just like Chip Kelly did at Oregon. 92-12 at Boise State, 57-6 in conference play. He fielded 2 undefeated teams. He was really the coach of the program that put the group of 5 on the map and started to raise eyebrows to say, maybe we should give them some opportunities, because when they hit the big stage, they usually showed up and more than not won the game against the likes of Virginia Tech and Oregon and Georgia and Oklahoma and others. But they always showed up and rarely, if ever, got embarrassed. So then he takes over a decent program at Washington. They just went 8-4 under Steve Sarkisian. Now they're the number 1 program in the Pac-12. Now that says something about the Pac-12 as well. UCLA has faltered. USC, of course, has faltered. In particular, Stanford has leveled off. But he owns the best program in the Pac-12, and it doesn't look like it's going to change in the next few years. He's recruiting better than anyone in the conference right now. I know that Mario Cristobal had the great class this year, but overall, over his tenure, better than anyone else. Top 10 to 12 in the nation. He's a great game coach, recruiter, runs a clean program, has a ton of respect from me and people that watch college football. Chris Peterson's at number 1 in the Pac-12. Those are our ratings, 12 all the way up to number 1 in the Pac-12. Of course, dive into the comments section. Let us know what you think about our rankings as we march on with coaches' rankings. We will have schedule rankings and record projections coming up And then after the end of spring practice for everyone, we're going to rank the players across the country right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, Patreon, and also the Amazon links to build the channel. Thank you so much. We'll see you soon.